Welcome into Eye on Northeast Kansas, the podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. So glad to have you along with us as we recap some of the top interviews you've seen on Eye on Northeast Kansas, the TV show. We bring it to you live 4 o'clock Central Time in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, from our WIBW TV studios in Topeka, Kansas. One great thing about living in the state of Kansas is the focus on agriculture and how we have so many agriculture experts at our disposal, all aspects of the field of agriculture, many of them through Kansas State University. Dr. Jennifer Ifft is among them. She is an expert in farm policy and economics, and she has been closely following discussions in Washington regarding a new farm bill. The current bill expires September 30th, and a lot of eyes are on what is going to happen from here, and it goes way beyond just farmers and ranchers. Dr. Jennifer Ifft joined us to explain. And Dr. Ifft, you have been following this very closely. September 30th, that's kind of what we're looking at now is the next thing?
Right. That's the deadline. Although there's a couple months where USDA can get by without a new farm bill or an extension before consequences start to happen.
Well, what is the status of the talks right now?
So the House Agricultural Committee has passed a bill out of committee, but that hasn't come to the floor. The Senate Ag Committee, both the Republicans and the Democrats have passed outlines, but that's where we're at right now. So there would be a lot more steps that would have to happen before getting a farm bill.
What is all included in a farm bill that makes this so important? Because people might think, well, I'm not a farmer, so what do I care about the farm bill? Why do we care? What's all in it?
Well, technically it should be called a farm and food bill. So since the Great Depression, the majority of money in farm bills have covered poverty, so hunger, support for hungry people, support for family farms when times are tough, and conservation. So think about the Dust Bowl. It's still the same today. It looks a little different. The world is different, but those priorities still make up the vast majority of money in the Farm Bill, but it also covers a lot of broadly popular public goods. So think, the research extension that we do at K-State and other land-grant universities, 4-H, rural governments get some funding from utilities, the U.S. Forest Service. So there's all kinds of groups, outside of, hunger and farming, which are broadly important, that are affected by the Farm Bill.
You talked about consequences, though, that it could be a couple of months before. What would be consequences if we can't come to an agreement?
Well, there's two major consequences. So if an extension isn't passed, we go back to the 1994 Farm Bill. That's called the permanent law. And if we go back to the 1949 Farm Bill, the USDA is obligated to take actions that would raise the price of some crops, say, 3, 4, 5 times. So there is a lot of support for helping farmers during tough times. But say if you increase the price of wheat by $4, I might plant wheat in my backyard, and a lot of other people might plant wheat. Then you have even more wheat, prices go down, and you actually make the problem that you wanted to solve worse. So,
and that part of it, though, can be a consequence. So first of all, if you're quadrupling the price for the raw good, then of course all the food we see at the grocery store, if we think it's gone up in price, I imagine it would go up even more.
Well, there would be more
that
production,
trickle down?
So not necessarily. There could be some trickle down.
And for farmers themselves, is it necessarily a good thing if you say, well, gosh, let it expire and let us get $4 more per whatever, or does that actually happen?
No, nobody wants this.
Okay.
But that's actually one of the reasons we keep having, the Farm Bill. It's usually bipartisan. It takes a lot to bring to pass any legislation, let alone bipartisan legislation. But nobody wants to go back to 1949. The other part is I talked before about all these different things that are funded through the Farm Bill. If you can't pass a Farm Bill, there's a broad array of popular programs that don't get funded, and our Congress today has to figure out ways to do that.
And I suppose if you go back to 1949, your food support programs like women, infant, children, does that go back to what they would have received in those earlier days, or did they even exist in those versions of the...
So there was some nutrition programs during the Great Depression, and they went on pause. It came back in the 60s and really the 70s. However, the nutrition programs, most of them are permanently authorized, which means if there isn't a Farm Bill, you'd say you'd still have SNAP, which formerly known as food stamps. You'd still have those programs. The other big one that's permanently authorized is crop insurance, so you'd still have the crop insurance program, which is important to a lot of farmers.
Does it, though, at some point come to a standstill? I mean, what are the sticking points right now? If everyone thinks these programs are good and we want them, what are the sticking points?
Well, some of the sticking points are political, but by no means all of them. So the Republicans broadly would like to see some reforms to nutrition programs. They don't want conservation programs to have climate priorities. The Democrats on the other side are really working to protect nutrition programs. They like to see those climate priorities for conservation programs, although some of it is between legislators from areas like farm areas, farm states, or non-farm. So you had a farm bill come out of the House Ag Committee, which is controlled by Republicans. Democrats from farm areas voted for it. On the flip side, you have some Republican legislators that would never vote for a farm bill. There's also regional differences. This has been going on for decades. So this is kind of the Midwest versus the South. I like to call it Team Corn versus Team Cotton. You have those again. It's reoccurring.
Well, it is interesting, and we will see what unfolds over the next couple months. We appreciate you being here and kind of sorting out why this is such a big deal. Dr. Ifft, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll be following the talks and keep you updated on what happens in Washington with the Farm Bill. In the city of Topeka, City Manager Robert Perez has been on the job for 6 weeks now. And as we've been saying, he jumped right into the fire with some major issues in the midst of discussions. Not only does he have to craft the budget proposal for the year ahead, he's already talked about that. We're also searching for a new City of Topeka police chief and, of course, the issue of homelessness and some initial recommendations that have come out from a task force. Dr. Perez joined us to bring us up to date on all the discussions. Dr. Perez, this is like right into things. You've been on the job about a month now.
About 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yeah, it's flown by.
Yeah, right. How has the adjustment period been?
It's been good. The teams have been great. The community, stakeholders, everybody I've worked with has been awesome. Very helpful, and so it's been a good transition.
Well, you get to town, and the very first thing you have to do is craft a budget proposal to present to everyone. And not only that, you had also realized we were about $15 million behind in the current year budget. First of all, explain where that shortfall was coming from.
So the $15 million is actually our proposed deficit for FY25. That deficit is actually it's essentially happening because our revenues are not coming in the way that we projected. And the overall costs, whether they be personnel or contractual or material costs, a lot of those things are higher. You know, like we're seeing, whenever we go to the grocery store, a lot of things are just more expensive. And so the cost of government is trending along that same way. So lower revenue projections and higher costs.
So it's not in this current year, it would be in next year.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
We're actually, our proposed budget is actually balanced for FY25. We're utilizing a number of one-time reserves, a big portion of our one-time reserves. We're shifting a couple items to capital, and so we're actually able to bridge our gap for FY25. But starting in FY26 and FY27, we're back in the deficit again because a lot of those one-time reserves we're going to use them to bridge FY25.
And there is a proposed mill levy increase?
So the proposed budget does include a 1 mil increase on our property taxes.
Weigh that out for people at home who might be saying, why don't you just cut the budget, cut some expenses because we're already tapped out because we have increased expenses as well, and now you're telling me you want me to pay more in property tax.
No, understood. So yes, so the budget does include a number of reductions, a number of vacant positions, things like that we're cutting. But the 1 mil that we need to use to basically balance the budget for like $150,000 home, I think it's the increase is going to be something like $20 or so per year.
Per year.
Yeah. So okay. I mean, divide that by 2, and you're looking at $8 or so, $9 a month for some folks, or yeah. Somewhere along those lines.
Along those lines. Yeah. Another big task that you have, and you just had a whole series of public meetings about this, is hiring a new police chief. So what's the next step? Where are you at in the process?
So what we're doing is we had about 260, we did launch an online survey. We had about 260 submissions through that online survey, in addition to the 3 in-person listening sessions. So we did get a lot of feedback from the community, so just thankful for that information. So taking a lot of the themes that we got from that feedback, and we're going to use that to craft the job description. We'll be working with an executive recruiter to actually post that, hopefully here in the next week or so.
What would be your goal for having a new police chief on board?
As far as timing, so I'm hoping towards the beginning, end of September, beginning of October. There may be some things that may push that schedule, but
Of this year?
This year, yes, ma'am.
So that's a pretty accelerated process to post the job, take in the applications, and get them interviewed.
Right, and again, we have a few things that are going on that may push that schedule, but definitely want to get somebody on board as quickly as possible.
Last time you were here, I also asked you about proposals for addressing the homelessness situation. A task force had issued recommendations. You had hoped maybe by the end of July we might see an initial proposal about something. Where do we stand, and what are we going to perhaps see happen?
Yeah, so our team pushed the presentation. We are looking to participate in the Built for Zero model. It's a collaboration with the state of Kansas and local stakeholders. And so we're briefing our city council tomorrow at council to share some of those details. The Built for Zero model essentially utilizes some of the top recommendations that our previous consultant had developed. And so we'll be briefing, as mentioned, council tomorrow and start discussing next steps. Well,
we'll be at tomorrow's governing body meeting then to see what discussions unfold and how everybody responds to that, and kind of how you end up taking the steps to get to that model. City Manager Dr. Robert Perez, thank you for being here. A lot going on, a lot of big things to deal with right now. Appreciate you sharing some time.
Thank you.
We are nearing public hearing time on the proposed budget, so we'll get a look at what is going to happen, how the discussions are going to unfold. All of this also mirrors a property tax discussion that has been going on, with some folks saying, look, we need to really toe the line here because folks are feeling the pinch, and the discussions are kind of twofold between mill levies that we see the city and other local taxing entities put on your property tax bill, as well as state law. They're taking a real hard look, some people are, at advocating with state lawmakers to revisit the appraisal process to keep the bills from going up due to appraisal increases. At the same time, even if local governments toe the line and don't increase a mill levy, to keep your bill from going up just because your values are going up. So a lot to be following when it comes to those issues. Speaking of homelessness and those discussions, the Topeka Rescue Mission, of course, is an organization that is closely involved in working with people who are unsheltered and homeless, and the solutions and how those things will move forward. They also did some interesting research on just what might offer insight into the reason some people become homeless. Lamanda Broyles is the executive director of the Topeka Rescue Mission. Courtney Barr is their deputy director for transformational services. They visited to fill us in on some research they've done locally. Lamanda, let's start first of all with an update on the discussions that have been happening at the city level with the governing body, briefed this week on an approach that they want to take to homelessness, the recommendations of the task force that we've seen. Where does TRM fit into all of this, and are you excited, concerned about the conversations?
You know, I think right now I'm more eager and anxious to kind of see where it goes. You know, the Rescue Mission has so much gratitude right now for everybody who is trying to find their involvement in it and what we need to do next, and being person-centered. I think if I could speak on a main concern that I have in regards to just the Built for Zero motto or the different initiatives that we're taking, is I really want to make sure that we have resources for the person. And so data collection is important. There's so many different aspects that are good. However, if we don't have things in place and we aren't going to start taking some action of having places for people and things like that, having their names on a list is just not going to be enough. And so I think this is great next steps. We're excited to see what we can do to partner. We stand firm in that, but there are just some concerns about what else we're putting in place.
The importance of that front end, I imagine, is part of what you're talking about as well. And that, Courtney, is where you've done a bit of research, which is really fascinating. You got to present it nationally, is that correct?
Correct.
And what were you specifically looking into?
So in 2022, we did an ACE research study with a population experiencing homelessness.
And ACE is Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Yep.
Okay.
And so there's an original study back from the 90s, and we wanted to look at the differences between that study that was done with a college-educated population, had health insurance, to our population of people experiencing homelessness. And so from that original study, 13% of people were able to say yes to 4 or more of those adverse childhood traumatic experiences.
What sorts of experiences are you talking about on that
list?
So
anything from divorce in the family, mental illness in the family, substance abuse, any form of physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, parents struggling with substance abuse, incarceration in the family, those kind of questions.
And you said 13% had 4 or more?
Correct.
Of those experiences?
Correct. So 4 or more is a threshold that they would look at, that there would be a greater propensity for mental health outcomes that were disadvantageous or physical health outcomes that weren't great. And so we did the same study looking at the mental health outcomes, physical health outcomes, as well as the ACE score. And our marker was 62% of our population scored an ACE score of 4 or more. So that is a 496% increase from that original study. So our population is 5 times more likely to have a greater likelihood of child traumatic experiences than this original general population that they studied at first.
What does that tell you about the needs then of the people that you come into contact with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we looked at like the mental health needs specifically. So from the national statistics of like depression, our population that took those surveys 8 times more likely to suffer from depression, 10 times more likely to suffer from bipolar disorder, and then schizophrenia is less than 2% in the general population. It goes up to 20% in ours. So that is 44 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. So it plays a huge role of 1, awareness, but then 2, advocacy for our people when there is a 1 to 1,200 ratio between providers and people that may need services. And so there's a need, and specifically in a population experiencing homelessness, there is an even greater need.
And when you do those needs, how is addressing those needs vital in terms of helping people successfully move away from having to need the support of TRM or organizations like it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't be successful in my home alone if I don't have community and community connection often helps bridge the gap between maybe provider care, but then sometimes we need mental health provider care. And so, but if I don't have access to that, if I don't have transportation to that, if I don't have health insurance that covers that, then that puts me at a greater likelihood to really struggle and then not be able to maintain my sobriety or maintain my housing or maintain my healthy relationships.
It's incredible to even think about. And how does this play into that discussion that you initially were talking about as we talk about the discussions going on at the city, county, state level in addressing homelessness? Where do you look at this research and say, this is what we need to pay attention to?
And I think that's what's hard, Melissa, because sometimes we think that when we are giving a voice from the Topeka Rescue Mission that we're adversaries, right? Or that we are bringing conflict, and that's not the case. There is great need for the dialogue that's happening at the city and county level, but the role of the rescue mission is to be people first and to say this is something that takes time, and we have got to have the resources in place because we see that it is not going to be a quick fix and that we've got to do things systematically. If not, we are causing additional trauma for people that are already functioning out of a trauma brain.
So we need people to build the houses, but also then give people the tools to be successful in those houses. LaManda, Courtney, thank you so much. Fascinating discussion. Appreciate you. Great to hear about the research.
Thank you.
They really are fascinating findings, and it really gives a bit of a glimpse into why dealing with homelessness is such a complex issue that is going to involve a lot of cooperation and a lot of different facets. So we're going to be watching as our local organizations continue to discuss that. In Kansas, it is already back to school time. A lot of the K through 12 students are already hitting the books. They stopped at the bus stops this week with their shiny backpacks and new shoes. Dr. Scott McWilliams is the superintendent in the Topeka area Auburn-Washburn School District. They recently have had a lot of projects. Some of them are coming to completion. Others are midway through. He visited us for an update during back to school week. Welcome to you.
Hey, thank you very much for
having me. And how did the
me.
day go? First day back?
We had a fantastic first day back. We greeted 6,000 students back to the Auburn-Washburn School District. We had an amazing day. Kudos to our kids, their families, and also to our amazing staff. We had a phenomenal first day back.
Is that a new tie that you got for the first day? Because, the
Every
kids
year.
do first day.
Exactly.
You got new clothes for the first day.
I got to do my shopping, absolutely.
It is kind of a time of change happening in the Auburn-Washburn district. You have several projects underway. We'll talk about the big one that is for next school year. But this school year, you've had some facility updates, improvements going on. What were those projects, and what is the status of the kids being able to use those?
It's such a gift in the Auburn-Washburn school community. We were able to pass a bond election back in 2022 after collecting feedback from all of the stakeholders about exactly what we're going to do in our schools. So very fortunate. This year we're opening up more early childhood classrooms. Over the last couple of years, we've had about 200 age 3 and 4 year olds enrolled in our school district. Over the next few years, we're going to increase that to over 500 3 and 4 year olds. It's going to be a tremendous boost to those young kiddos getting ready for age 5 in kindergarten. So that's in play.
When will those open?
So we're going to be rolling those out over the next several years.
Okay.
There'll be a classroom or 2 or 3, depending on the year, over the next 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And then later this fall at Washburn Rural High School, we are going to open a state-of-the-art innovation center, and we're going to expand our partnerships with community businesses, and cannot be any more excited about those real-world job skills that we're going to be able to provide our high school students.
There's going to be a pretty cool TV studio in there, I hear.
There is, yes. You'll definitely have to come check it out.
When you decided on that innovation center, what was the conversation, the feedback like in terms of what it is that high school students need in today's world?
Yeah, two things. Part of that communication came directly from kids. And they talked about these are some interests that we have that we want to learn more about. I think I might have interest in pursuing these career paths later in life, but I'd kind of like to experiment with those before I, take that leap, so to speak. The second thing was families. Many moms and dads said, hey, thank you so much for the programs that we have in place, but not every single student in our school district are going to go to what I've referred to as a traditional four-year university track. And so how about career and technical education? When we started hearing that feedback from our families, we said, you're absolutely correct. We already have many career and technical education programs in place, but we want to expand that. And we also want to increase the number of business partnerships that we have just with local businesses to try to help them be able to grow some of their own future employees as well.
And as we look at the first day at Wanamaker Elementary, these students actually are going to be, some of them perhaps benefiting from the big addition to the district that'll actually open next year. And that is the new middle school that you have under construction. That's going to be located where, and how is that in terms of being on schedule?
Yeah, so we're on the northeast corner of 29th Street and Auburn Road. We'll be opening the second middle school next school year for the 25-26 school year. Washburn Rural Middle School has a fantastic reputation, has for many traditions. It's just a really large school of 7th and 8th grade students. Next year we're going to open up the second building, and we're also going to transition our 6th grade students to the middle school level. Each of the schools will have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students starting next school year, and in a couple of years the enrollment in each of those schools will be about 600 students, and we think that's going to provide better learning opportunities for students.
Not only that, you had mentioned the growth and demand for early childhood, which then I imagine would pay forward to a growth in need for space in the elementary schools. So by moving the 6th graders out into the middle schools, what does that accomplish?
There you go. So our schools are tight right now. We're at capacity in each of our schools, and when we had our feedback back in 2022 that led to the bond campaign and election, it was our schools feel tight and we just need a little more space. And so by moving those 6th graders to the middle school, by just building one school, we actually are increasing capacity not only at the middle level, but also at the elementary level. And that opens up the door to early childhood education. A
lot going on. Any quick message to parents as the kids are now back in school?
I just want to say thank you so much for having your students ready to go. We are so excited for this year, and we are going to have a very successful and productive school year. And just very excited today seeing them all coming back through our doors.
That's why you do it. That's why you do what you do.
Absolutely.
Dr. Scott McWilliams, thank you so much for the update on what's happening in the Auburn-Washburn School District. If your kids have already headed back to class, we hope they are having a great first week and an easy time adjusting. If they are getting ready to head back, all the best to you. Let's have a great, successful year. If you'd like to see the videos from these interviews and from all of our guests on Eye on Northeast Kansas, you can head to WIBW.com. We also put them on our WIBW 13 News YouTube channel. Be sure to click subscribe while you are there and check out all of our other video streams that we have for you. And of course, you can check out my Facebook page, WIBW Melissa Bruner, for a bit of a behind-the-scenes glimpse with our studio selfies. Until next time, we'll see you on the Red Couch.